The galaxy in turmoil. The galaxy had always been a chaotic place, full of rivalries, alliances, and betrayals. But even by galactic standards, the arrival of the Zinthar Dominion was a nightmare. The Dominion, a coalition of brutal warlords from the dark regions of space, swept across the galaxy like a storm. Their fleets were massive, their soldiers merciless, and their technology decades ahead of anyone else's. Entire planets surrendered without firing a single shot, while those who resisted were reduced to rubble. Among the stars, hope was a dying ember. The coalition of defiant worlds, a group of smaller, weaker planets that had banded together for survival, tried to fight back. Their leaders were brave, and their people were desperate, but bravery and desperation were no match for the Zinthar. One by one, their fleets were destroyed. Entire systems fell into Dominion hands. Soon, it became clear the Zinthar were unstoppable. On the distant planet of Trenok 7, the coalition held its final meeting. In a darkened chamber filled with holograms of alien leaders, the mood was grim. "We are out of time," rumbled General Kraxus, a hulking reptilian figure whose scars told the story of countless battles. "The Zinthar are weeks away from our core worlds. If we do not find a solution, the galaxy is lost." A wiry insectoid leader clicked her mandibles nervously. "What solution is left? We have no weapons strong enough, no allies powerful enough. Who could possibly stand against them?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. No one. But just as despair began to take hold, a junior officer rushed into the chamber. His face was pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. "General Kraxus," he gasped, "we've intercepted a transmission. It's from a previously uncharted system." Kraxus frowned. "A new system? Who are they?" The officer hesitated, as if unsure how to explain. "They call themselves humans. Their planet is called Earth." The room erupted in murmurs. No one had heard of this species before. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless civilizations, but for a species to remain entirely unknown was rare. It was either a sign of irrelevance or something far more dangerous. General Kraxus leaned forward. "What does the transmission say?" The officer played the recording. A human voice crackled through the air, its tone calm but firm. "To the Zinthar Dominion. We have observed your actions. We have seen the destruction you bring. Earth stands for freedom, and we will not allow your tyranny to spread unchecked. Consider this your only warning. Leave the galaxy in peace, or face us." The room fell into stunned silence. Then laughter erupted from several leaders. "Who are these humans?" scoffed a blue-skinned ambassador. "They sound delusional. They have no idea what they're dealing with." "They're suicidal," another leader muttered. But General Kraxus wasn't laughing. He replayed the message, listening carefully. There was something about the human's voice, an unshakable confidence that didn't match their obscurity. "Have we analyzed their system?" Kraxus asked. The officer nodded. "We sent a scout probe. Their planet is strange, isolated, with no signs of interstellar travel. But the energy readings, they're off the charts." Kraxus narrowed his eyes. "Off the charts how?" The officer hesitated. "It's hard to explain. Their planet's defense systems are unlike anything we've seen. Primitive on the surface, but layered, almost like they're hiding something." The insectoid leader clicked her mandibles again. "Hiding, or bluffing. They could just be a desperate species making empty threats." Kraxus shook his head. "Bluffs don't come with energy readings like that. No, there's more to these humans than we realize." Just then, another transmission came through. This time, it wasn't from Earth, it was from the Zinthar. A Dominion warlord appeared as a hologram in the chamber, his crimson eyes burning with malice. "To the coalition of defiant worlds," he sneered, "your resistance is over. Surrender, and I may let some of you live as slaves. Resist, and I will personally see to it that your worlds burn." The leaders bristled, but Kraxus stood tall. The galaxy will never bow to you. The warlord laughed. The galaxy already has. Your coalition is broken. Your fleets are destroyed. You have nothing left. Craxus clenched his fists. He hated the truth of those words. But then, the warlord's smirk faltered. And as for these humans, the Zinthar growled, they will regret ever speaking against us. Their planet will serve as an example of what happens to those who defy the Dominion. The transmission cut off, leaving the room in silence. For the first time in months, Craxus allowed himself a small smile. The Zinthar had just made a critical mistake. They had underestimated the humans. They'll regret that, Craxus murmured. The other leaders looked at him, confused. You believe these humans can help us? One asked. I don't know what they can do, Craxus admitted. But I know this. Anyone bold enough to challenge the Zinthar is worth watching. Far away, on a blue and green planet called Earth, preparations were already underway. The humans were not an ancient species, nor the most advanced. But they had something the galaxy had never seen before, a spirit that refused to break. And in the shadows of their world, the Americans were preparing for a war that would change everything. The first contact. The Zinthar Dominion wasted no time. Their scouts swept into the Sol system, their sleek black ships gliding through the darkness like predatory shadows. They came expecting an easy target, a small, unremarkable planet that dared to defy them. Earth had no presence in the galactic community, no known allies, no visible signs of advanced technology. The Zinthar warlords anticipated a swift and brutal victory. But from the moment their ships entered the outer edges of the solar system, something felt wrong. Commander Raxer, the leader of the Zinthar scouting fleet, sat on the bridge of his flagship, his crimson eyes scanning the holographic display in front of him. The readings were strange. Earth's system was heavily monitored, not by advanced orbital platforms or planetary defenses, but by thousands of seemingly primitive satellites and probes. It was as though the humans were obsessively watching every inch of their space. Commander, said his second-in-command, a wiry lieutenant with scales the color of ash, we've detected energy signatures on the third planet. They're faint, but unusual. Unusual how? Raxer demanded. The lieutenant hesitated. It's as if they're cloaking something. The energy signatures fluctuate wildly, almost as if they're designed to confuse our sensors. Raxer growled. Typical primitive trickery. They think they can hide their weaknesses from us. Deploy the scouts. I want full scans of their defenses. The scout ships shot toward Earth, sleek and silent. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. But as they approached the planet, strange things began to happen. One by one, the scout systems started to malfunction. Their navigation systems became erratic, causing them to veer off course. Communications flickered, then went dark. And then, as the lead scout descended toward the planet, it simply vanished from the display. Raxer's claws dug into his command chair. What happened? Unknown, Commander, the lieutenant said, his voice tight with unease. It's as if the planet swallowed them whole. Swallowed them. Ridiculous. Send another wave. A second wave of scouts was dispatched, this time in a tighter formation, but the result was the same. As they approached Earth, strange anomalies disrupted their systems. Some were pulled off course by inexplicable gravitational shifts. Others were blinded by sudden bursts of electromagnetic interference. And those that made it closer to the planet disappeared. Raxer's frustration turned to fury. This is impossible. That planet is a backwater. How are they doing this? The lieutenant's scales rippled with unease. Commander, it's not just the planet. We're detecting strange readings across the entire system. The asteroid belt, the gas giants, even the outer edges of the system, they're all active. Active. In what way? It's hard to explain. It's as if the entire system is a web, and we've just walked into it. Raxer snarled. Enough of this nonsense. Prepare the fleet for full planetary bombardment. If they want to play games, we'll burn their world to ash." But just as the order was given, an alarm blared across the bridge. A new signal had appeared on the display. A ship, approaching rapidly from Earth. It was massive, dwarfing even Raxor's flagship. Its design was unlike anything the Zinthar had ever seen, sleek, angular, and bristling with weapons. But what truly unnerved the crew was the energy signature. It was enormous, far surpassing anything the Zinthar could comprehend. The ship transmitted a single message, a human voice, calm and steady, echoed through the Zinthar fleet. "You have entered restricted space. Leave now, or face the consequences." Raxor's claws trembled, but he refused to show fear. "Who are you to threaten us?" he roared. "We are the Zinthar Dominion. Your world will burn for your defiance." The human voice didn't falter. "You've made your choice. Prepare for retaliation." And then it began. The massive human ship surged forward with shocking speed. Its weapon systems came to life, firing beams of energy that cut through the Zinthar ships like paper. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as one after another, Zinthar vessels were obliterated. The Dominion's fleet, which had crushed countless civilizations, was being dismantled by a single ship. On the bridge of his flagship, Raxor watched in disbelief as his fleet was torn apart. "Retreat," he barked. "Fall back. We'll regroup and—" Before he could finish, the human ship fired a final devastating shot. Raxor's flagship shuddered, alarms blaring as fires broke out across the bridge. The last thing he saw was the planet Earth, calm and untouched, as his ship exploded in a blinding flash of light. Far below, on the surface of Earth, a small team of operators monitored the situation from a hidden command center. The lead operator leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smirk on his face. "Another one bites the dust," he said. His colleague chuckled. "Think they'll send another wave?" "Probably. And when they do, we'll be ready. The Americans always are." As the operators returned to their stations, the human ship silently disappeared, cloaking itself once again. Earth remained a mystery, its secrets hidden beneath layers of deception and ingenuity. But one thing was clear. The game had changed, and humanity was no longer content to sit on the sidelines. The web tightens. The Zinthar Dominion's defeat at the hands of a single human vessel sent shockwaves rippling through the fleet. Whispers of the destruction spread quickly among the remaining ships, their crews shaken to the core. Commander Raxor's flagship was gone, and with it, the certainty of their invincibility. For the first time in generations, the Zinthar were forced to retreat. But even as they pulled back, they realized retreat wouldn't end this nightmare. Deep within the fleet's remaining command vessel, Admiral Vaxar, an older, grizzled Zinthar, with scars across his dark-scaled face, watched the reports with cold fury. His crimson eyes burned as he analyzed the footage of the battle. The humans had revealed their hand, but only partially. Vaxar suspected there was more to Earth's defenses than a single ship. "This isn't over," he growled, pacing across the glowing holomap of the Sol system. "They've struck us once. Now we'll strike back tenfold." "But Admiral," one of his officers protested hesitantly, "our long-range scans are showing anomalies throughout the system. We can't pinpoint their installations, and their weaponry is unlike anything we've encountered before." "Excuses," Vaxar snapped, slamming his fist onto the console. "They're primitives playing with stolen toys. Find me their weak points, or I'll find officers who will." The crew scrambled to obey, but the truth was, no one understood what they were dealing with. Humanity had stayed quiet for centuries, hidden, watching, learning. But now they had emerged, and the Zinthar were caught in a trap they didn't even know was there. Meanwhile, far below the chaos in space, humanity's secret was spreading. Deep in the Rocky Mountains, in an underground bunker that stretched for miles, the United Nations Special Defense Command monitored the Zinthar fleet. A vast holographic display filled the room, showing every ship, every energy signature, and every movement of the alien armada. Major Elena Carter, a sharp-eyed strategist with a reputation for bold plans, stood at the center of the room. She leaned over the console, studying the Dominion's retreat with a calculating gaze. "They're regrouping," she said to the room of operatives. "They'll be back, and they'll come in force this time." "Let them come," said Captain Torres, a veteran pilot who had seen his fair share of action. "We'll be ready. The program's been waiting for something like this." Carter glanced at him. "We're not here to just be ready, Torres. We're here to show them exactly what happens when you poke the bear." Back in orbit, the Zinthar fleet began deploying reconnaissance drones. Small, stealthy, and equipped with advanced cloaking devices, the drones were sent to scan the inner planets of the Sol system. Vaxer believed brute force alone wouldn't win this fight. He needed to understand the humans' tricks. The drones slipped past Earth's outermost defenses, weaving through asteroid belts and planetary orbits. They detected faint traces of energy signatures, strange constructs buried beneath the surfaces of moons and planets, and anomalies that defied explanation. But every time they tried to get closer, they were met with interference. On the dark side of the moon, one drone managed to slip through the cracks. Its sensors captured images of a vast installation, a sprawling complex hidden within craters, its design sleek and alien. The drone transmitted its data back to the fleet just before it vanished, crushed by a gravitational anomaly that appeared out of nowhere. Vaxer studied the transmission with a mix of awe and dread. "So the primitives have been hiding in the shadows all along," he muttered. "They turned this system into a fortress." "Admiral," one of his officers interrupted, "the humans are hailing us again." Vaxer's eyes narrowed. "Put it through." The bridge filled with the sound of a human voice. Calm, measured, and confident. "This is Commander James Lawson of the United Nations Defense Force. You've already seen what we're capable of. Leave now, while you still can." Vaxer sneered at the audacity. "Humans," he hissed, "you think a single victory changes anything. We are the Zinthar Dominion. We will burn your world to ash and salt the remains." There was a brief silence on the other end of the transmission, followed by a faint chuckle. "We expected you to say that," Lawson replied. "But you should understand something. You're not just fighting Earth. You're fighting every trick, every lesson, and every ounce of ingenuity humanity has ever learned. And we're very, very good at fighting." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. As the Zinthar prepared for their next assault, Earth's defenses shifted into high gear. Across the globe, hidden installations activated. Massive orbital platforms uncloaked, bristling with weapons, ships that had been hidden in plain sight, masquerading as simple satellites. Powered up, their energy signatures flaring like small suns. Deep in the oceans, enormous submarines rose from the depths, carrying payloads that could reshape entire continents. And in the deserts and mountains, experimental aircraft prepared for launch, their sleek designs a testament to humanity's relentless innovation. In the hidden bunker, Carter issued the final orders. "Activate the planetary grid. If they want to play games, we'll show them just how dangerous we can be." One by one, Earth's defenses came online, creating an invisible web of deterrence and destruction. The Zinthar had underestimated humanity, but soon they would learn the cost of their arrogance. And so, as the Zinthar fleet advanced once more, they found themselves stepping deeper into a web of humanity's design, a web that would tighten with every move they made. Humanity strikes back. The Zinthar Dominion's fleet loomed at the edge of Earth's orbit, their towering warships blotting out the stars. Their formation was tight, precise, and overwhelming, a testament to centuries of intergalactic conquest. But for all their strength, their opponents remained an enigma. Humanity had revealed only glimpses of its capabilities, and those glimpses were enough to unsettle even the most hardened Zinthar officers. Admiral Vaxar stood on the bridge of his command ship, his gaze fixed on the blue planet below. "Prepare the fleet for full engagement," he ordered. His voice was a mixture of rage and confidence. "We'll crush their defenses and take their world. I want no survivors." The officers saluted, their scaled hands moving in unison. But as they began their preparations, a strange silence fell across the bridge. The ambient hum of the ship's systems flickered, and for a moment the lights dimmed. "What's happening?" Vaxer demanded. "Admiral," an officer stammered, "our systems are under attack. Some sort of cyber intrusion. It's everywhere." Far below, in the hidden control center buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, Major Elena Carter watched the chaos unfold on her monitor. A sly smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "Is the worm in?" she asked, turning to her lid tech specialist, a wiry man named Briggs. "Like clockwork," Briggs replied, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. "Their entire fleet is running on fragmented protocols now. We got access to their communications, targeting systems, even their environmental controls." "Good," Carter said. "Let's make them feel welcome." On board the Zinthar ships, confusion turned to panic. Lights flickered, airlocks sealed and unsealed at random, and gravity fluctuated wildly. In one corridor, an officer floated helplessly as his boots lost their magnetic grip. In another, the temperature plummeted to freezing, frost creeping across the walls. Vaxer clenched his fists, his rage barely contained. "Counter the intrusion. Seal the systems." "We're trying." "Admiral," the chief engineer replied, sweat dripping down his face. "But their code, it's like nothing we've ever seen. It adapts faster than we can counter it." Before Vaxer could respond, a booming voice echoed across the ship's intercom. It wasn't Zinthar. It was human. The language was guttural to Zinthar ears, but the message was unmistakable. "This is your only warning. Leave now or face annihilation." The Zinthar fleet, for all its size and firepower, found itself paralyzed. And then humanity made its move. From the shadowed side of the moon, an armada emerged. Ships of sleek design, bristling with weapons, surged forward with terrifying precision. They didn't move like conventional spacecraft. Their maneuvers were sharp, almost unpredictable, as if the pilots were anticipating the Zinthar's every move. The first wave struck without mercy, targeting the Dominion's vulnerable supply ships and troop carriers. Humanity's fleet dismantled the Zinthar's support infrastructure within minutes. Explosions lit up the darkness of space, debris scattering like fiery confetti. On board one of Earth's lead ships, Commander James Lawson directed the assault with calm precision. "Focus fire on their engines. Leave them stranded." "Understood, sir," replied his tactical officer. Admiral Vaxar watched in stunned silence as the humans tore through his fleet like a swarm of predators. How is this possible?" he growled. "They're primitives." But the evidence before him said otherwise. The humans fought like they had spent centuries preparing for this moment. Their weapons were devastating, their tactics brutal, and their resolve unshakable. "Admiral, we've lost the outer perimeter," one officer cried. "Their ship's air." The bridge shook violently as an explosion rocked the command ship. Sparks flew from the consoles, and the crew scrambled to maintain control. "Enough," Vaxer bellowed. "Deploy the annihilation cannons. If they want a fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." On Earth, Major Carter watched the Dominion's fleet attempt to regroup. She knew they weren't beaten yet. The Zinthar weren't known for retreating, and desperation often made them even more dangerous. "They're charging their heavy artillery," Briggs said, his voice tense. "If those cannons fire, they'll flatten half the planet." Carter nodded grimly. "Activate the grid." Across Earth, hidden installations powered up. Massive arrays buried beneath mountains and oceans hummed to life, channeling energy into a coordinated defense system. The planetary grid was humanity's ultimate ace, a network of satellites and ground-based weaponry designed to intercept and neutralize even the most advanced alien threats. As the Zinthar cannons prepared to fire, the grid responded. Blinding beams of energy lanced through space, striking the cannons with pinpoint accuracy. One by one, the Zinthor's most powerful weapons were destroyed before they could unleash their fury. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Vaxar felt the chill of fear. Humanity wasn't just fighting back, they were winning. On the command ship's bridge, the lights flickered again, and Vaxar heard the human voice return. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a promise. We told you to leave. Now, you'll see what happens when you don't. The turning tide. The Zinthor Dominion's fleet was in shambles. The once proud armada, which had terrorized countless star systems, was now reduced to scattered ships struggling to regroup. Fires raged across their hulls, and debris from obliterated vessels drifted aimlessly through the void. Yet, even in their darkest hour, the Zinthor refused to retreat. They were conquerors, and conquerors didn't run. Admiral Vaxar paced the damaged bridge of his command ship, his sharp claws tapping against the floor in frustration. "Status report," he barked, his voice a mixture of anger and desperation. "Our fleet is down to 40% operational capacity, Admiral," an officer stammered. "Their attacks are relentless. It's as if they know our every move before we make it." "And the annihilation cannons?" Vaxar demanded. "Disabled, sir," the engineer replied, avoiding eye contact. "Their planetary defenses are unprecedented." Vaxar's scales darkened, a sign of his rising fury. "How can primitives wield such power?" he growled. "They've hidden their true strength all along." Meanwhile, on Earth's lead warship, the Resolute, Commander James Lawson reviewed the battlefield with grim satisfaction. The humans had turned the tide, but the fight wasn't over yet. "Commander, the Zinthor are regrouping near the debris field," his tactical officer reported. "Looks like they're preparing for a counterattack." Lawson nodded, his eyes narrowing. "They're desperate. That makes them dangerous. Let's not give them the chance to strike first." He turned to his communications officer. "Patch me through to the fleet." A moment later, his voice echoed across every human ship. "This is Commander Lawson. We've pushed them back, but the fight isn't over. Stick to your formations, watch your wingmen, and remember what's at stake. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. Let's finish this." Back on the Zinthor command ship, Vaxar slammed his fist against the console. "Send in the hunters," he snarled. "If these humans want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." The hunters were the Dominion's elite strike force. Small, agile ships piloted by the best of the Zinthor's warriors. Unlike the massive warships that had been decimated by human tactics, the hunters were built for speed and precision. Their arrival on the battlefield was met with a renewed sense of hope among the Zinthor ranks. The sleek ships darted through the debris field, weaving around the wreckage with deadly grace. Their first strikes caught the human fleet off guard. A squadron of Earth's fighters was obliterated in seconds, and several capital ships sustained heavy damage. "They're trying to break our lines," one officer called out on the Resolute's bridge. "Not on my watch," Lawson replied. "Deploy the interceptors. Let's see how their hunters fare against a real challenge." The interceptors were humanity's answer to the Zinthor's speed and agility. Smaller than the hunters but equipped with advanced eye-assisted targeting systems, they could outmaneuver and outthink even the most skilled pilots. The two forces clashed in a chaotic ballet of destruction, lasers and missiles crisscrossing the void. In the midst of the battle, one of the Zinthor's top pilots, Captain Zorak, found himself locked in a deadly dogfight with an interceptor. The human pilot was unpredictable, using tactics Zorak had never seen before. Just as Zorak thought he had the upper hand, the interceptor flipped on its axis, firing a precision shot that sent his ship spiraling into the debris field. "Impossible," Zorak muttered before his ship exploded in a fiery blaze. On Earth, Major Elena Carter monitored the battle from the underground command center. The Zinthor were adapting quickly, but humanity's resilience was holding firm. "Briggs, how's the infiltration program holding up?" she asked. "Still active," Briggs replied, his eyes glued to his monitor. "We've got eyes on their entire fleet. They're focusing everything on our front lines, but they're leaving their supply ships exposed." Carter's lips curled into a smirk. "Perfect. Send the coordinates to the fleet. Let's cut off their lifeline." The human fleet pivoted with precision, striking at the Zinthar's vulnerable supply ships. Without fuel and ammunition, the Dominion's remaining forces began to falter. Their warships grew sluggish, their attacks less coordinated. Humanity's relentless assault left them with no time to recover. On the Zinthar command ship, chaos reigned. Officers shouted over one another, alarms blared, and the once unshakable Admiral Vaxar stood frozen, his mind racing for a solution. "Admiral," his chief officer said, his voice trembling, "we have to retreat. If we stay, we'll be annihilated." Vaxar's pride waged war with his survival instincts. To retreat was unthinkable, but to remain was suicide. He clenched his fists, his sharp claws digging into his palms. "Order the retreat," he said through gritted teeth. "We'll regroup and return. This isn't over." As the Zinthar fleet began to withdraw, a cheer erupted across humanity's ships. Against all odds, they had not only survived but forced their enemy into retreat. On the Resolute, Commander Lawson allowed himself a small smile. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "But next time, we'll be ready." Humanity's hidden ace. The battlefield lay eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of Earth's victorious fleet repositioning itself. The Zinthar had retreated, their once unassailable dominance shattered. But for Commander James Lawson aboard the Resolute, the silence was not a comfort. It was a warning. "They're not gone for good," he muttered, his eyes scanning the tactical display on the bridge. This was too easy for a species like them. "They're regrouping," his tactical officer, Lieutenant Vega, replied. "Question is, what's their next move?" Lawson exhaled sharply. "Whatever it is, we're not letting them get the upper hand. Prep the fleet, double-check all defense systems, and—" He hesitated for a moment, his expression darkening. "Notify Major Carter. It's time to activate Project Tempest." In the underground command center on Earth, Major Elena Carter stared at the encrypted message on her monitor. She had known this moment would come, but the weight of it still pressed heavily on her shoulders. Project Tempest wasn't just a secret, it was humanity's greatest gamble. "Briggs," she called out to her trusted engineer, "are the Tempest arrays operational?" "Barely," Briggs replied, typing furiously at his console. "We've kept them off the grid to avoid detection, but that also means they're temperamental." "Temperamental isn't good enough," Carter said firmly. "If the Zinthar figure out what we're about to unleash, we won't get a second chance." Briggs nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'll make it work, Major. Just give me a little more time." While Earth's forces scrambled to prepare their hidden weapon, the Zinthar Dominion wasn't sitting idle. Admiral Vaxar stood in his dimly lit war room, surrounded by holographic projections of his fleet and Earth's defenses. "We underestimated them once," Vaxar said, his voice low and dangerous. "It won't happen again. Deploy the dread spheres." A ripple of unease passed through the gathered officers. The dread spheres were the Zinthar's most destructive weapons, massive planet-killing machines capable of wiping out entire civilizations in a single strike. Deploying them was a clear message: no more games. "But, Admiral," one officer ventured cautiously, "our fleets are still recovering." "If the humans—" "They won't stop us," Vaxar interrupted, his claws digging into the table. "This is their end." Hours later, the Zinthar's dread spheres emerged from hyperspace, their ominous silhouettes blotting out the stars. The humans saw them coming, but even from Earth's command center, the sight was enough to send a shiver down Major Carter's spine. "They've brought planet killers," one of the younger officers whispered, his voice shaking. Carter straightened, her jaw tightening. "Good," she said with icy determination. "Let them think they've won. Briggs, are we ready?" Briggs looked up from his console, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and pride. "The Tempest arrays are online, Major. Just say the word." On the battlefield, the Resolute and the rest of the human fleet moved into defensive formations, preparing for what seemed like certain doom. Commander Lawson addressed his crew with a calm, steady voice, masking the tension he felt. "They're throwing everything they have at us," he said. "But we didn't come this far to roll over. Trust in the plan. Trust in each other. And trust that we've got a little surprise up our sleeves." As the Zinthar fleet advanced, the dread spheres powered up their colossal weapons, glowing ominously as they prepared to unleash devastation. But before they could fire, a sudden burst of energy rippled through space, a wave so massive it disrupted communications and scrambled targeting systems across the battlefield. "What the?" Vaxar growled, staring at his malfunctioning displays. "What's happening?" Back on Earth, Major Carter allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. "That's the Tempest array," she said, her voice steady. "Electromagnetic disruption field. It's only Phase 1. Briggs grinned despite his exhaustion. "Phase 2 is gonna be a lot more fun." As the Zinthar fleet struggled to recover, Earth's hidden orbital platforms sprang to life. Massive cannons, long concealed within asteroids and disguised as space debris, emerged and locked onto the dread spheres. The platforms fired in unison, their powerful beams slicing through the planet killer's defenses like a hot knife through butter. One by one, the dread spheres exploded in brilliant bursts of light, each detonation sending shockwaves through the Zinthar ranks. The remaining ships, already disoriented by the Tempest array, were sitting ducks for humanity's counterattack. On the bridge of the Resolute, cheers erupted as the first dread sphere went down, followed quickly by the second and third. Lawson allowed himself a rare grin. "They thought they had us figured out," he said, "but they don't know the first thing about humanity." The Zinthar fleet, now leaderless and in disarray, began to scatter. Some ships flowed into hyperspace, while others were picked off by Earth's forces. The battle was turning into a rout. In the Zinthar command ship, Admiral Vaxar watched in stunned silence as his fleet fell apart. His pride, his ambition, everything was crumbling before his eyes. This isn't possible," he muttered. "How could primitives do this?" But deep down, he already knew the answer. Humanity wasn't primitive. They were something else entirely, something the galaxy had never seen before. As the last remnants of the Zinthar fleet vanished into the void, the battlefield fell silent once more. This time, the silence wasn't a warning. It was a victory. Back on Earth, Major Carter leaned back in her chair, exhaustion finally catching up to her. "We did it," she said quietly. Briggs chuckled, shaking his head. "No, Major. They did it. The whole damn planet." The human fleet pivoted with precision, striking at the Zinthar's vulnerable supply ships. Without fuel and ammunition, the Dominion's remaining forces began to falter. Their warships grew sluggish, their attacks less coordinated. Humanity's relentless assault left them with no time to recover. On the Zinthar command ship, chaos reigned. Officers shouted over one another. Alarms blared, and the once unshakable Admiral Vaxar stood frozen, his mind racing for a solution. "Admiral," his chief officer said, his voice trembling, "we have to retreat. If we stay, we'll be annihilated." Vaxar's pride waged war with his survival instincts. To retreat was unthinkable, but to remain was suicide. He clenched his fists, his sharp claws digging into his palms. "Order the retreat," he said through gritted teeth. "We'll regroup and return. This isn't over." As the Zinthar fleet began to withdraw, a cheer erupted across humanity's ships. Against all odds, they had not only survived but forced their enemy into retreat. On the Resolute, Commander Lawson allowed himself a small smile. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "But next time, we'll be ready." Humanity's hidden ace. The battlefield lay eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of Earth's victorious fleet repositioning itself. The Zinthar had retreated, their once unassailable dominance shattered. But for Commander James Lawson aboard the Resolute, the silence was not a comfort, it was a warning. "They're not gone for good," he muttered, his eyes scanning the tactical display on the bridge. This was too easy for a species like them. "They're regrouping," his tactical officer, Lieutenant Vega, replied. "Question is, what's their next move?" Lawson exhaled sharply. "Whatever it is, we're not letting them get the upper hand. Prep the fleet, double-check all defense systems, and—" He hesitated for a moment, his expression darkening. "Notify Major Carter. It's time to activate Project Tempest." In the underground command center on Earth, Major Elena Carter stared at the encrypted message on her monitor. She had known this moment would come, but the weight of it still pressed heavily on her shoulders. Project Tempest wasn't just a secret, it was humanity's greatest gamble. "Briggs," she called out to her trusted engineer, "are the Tempest arrays operational?" "Barely," Briggs replied, typing furiously at his console. "We've kept them off the grid to avoid detection, but that also means they're temperamental." "Temperamental isn't good enough," Carter said firmly. "If the Zinthar figure out what we're about to unleash, we won't get a second chance." Briggs nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'll make it work, Major. Just give me a little more time." While Earth's forces scrambled to prepare their hidden weapon, the Zinthar Dominion wasn't sitting idle. Admiral Vaxar stood in his dimly lit war room, surrounded by holographic projections of his fleet and Earth's defenses. "We underestimated them once," Vaxar said, his voice low and dangerous. "It won't happen again. Deploy the dread spheres." A ripple of unease passed through the gathered officers. The dread spheres were the Zinthar's most destructive weapons, massive planet-killing machines capable of wiping out entire civilizations in a single strike. Deploying them was a clear message: no more games. "But, Admiral," one officer ventured cautiously, "our fleets are still recovering." "If the humans—" "They won't stop us," Vaxar interrupted, his claws digging into the table. "This is their end." Hours later, the Zinthar's dread spheres emerged from hyperspace, their ominous silhouettes blotting out the stars. The humans saw them coming, but even from Earth's command center, the sight was enough to send a shiver down Major Carter's spine. "They've brought planet killers," one of the younger officers whispered, his voice shaking. Carter straightened, her jaw tightening. "Good," she said with icy determination. "Let them think they've won. Briggs, are we ready?" The betrayal. The galaxy was supposed to be a place of peace. For centuries, the Galactic Council, an alliance of the most advanced alien species, had maintained control over the stars. They had kept the balance, with each race playing their part in the order of the universe. Humanity had always been an outsider, a species that was just beginning to reach the stars. But what they didn't know was that the Council had already made its decision about them. Humans were a threat. It all began in the quiet of space, in the Council's grand chambers. The leaders of the various alien races, beings of unimaginable power, gathered to discuss the future of the galaxy. They had seen the rise of human technology, advanced chips, powerful weapons, and the growing influence Earth was having across the stars. To the Council, it was clear: humanity's rapid growth could destabilize the balance they had worked so hard to create. And so, they decided that humanity had to be eliminated. But the Council knew that a direct attack would only provoke resistance. They needed something more subtle, something that would make humans believe they had allies in the galaxy, only for those allies to betray them when it mattered most. It was a cruel plan, but to the Council, it was necessary. They could not allow humanity to rise above their station. For years, the Galactic Council worked behind the scenes. They planted seeds of doubt, whispered false promises of alliance, and made deals with human leaders, deals that seemed to benefit both sides. But in secret, they were preparing their forces for a swift and devastating strike. The first signs of betrayal came when Earth's fleet, led by Commander Rhea, received an urgent message from the Galactic Council. The message promised an alliance. Humanity would join the Council, become a part of the greater galactic order. It seemed too good to be true. But in the midst of the growing tensions with neighboring alien factions, Earth accepted the offer. It was the perfect opportunity for Earth to gain allies and advance its influence in the galaxy. The fleet, fully prepared for what was supposed to be a momentous diplomatic mission, set out to meet the Council representatives in the distant reaches of space. However, as the fleet arrived at the appointed coordinates, things went terribly wrong. The Council had arranged a false meeting point, a trap. Without warning, human ships were ambushed by a coalition of alien fleets. Ships that had once promised to fight alongside Earth now turned their weapons on them. The human fleet was surrounded, trapped, and completely outgunned. Commander Ria's voice crackled over the communication system as she tried to make sense of the chaos. "What's happening? Where are the Council ships?" she demanded. But no response came. There was no one to answer. The betrayal was complete. Earth's fleet fought back with everything they had, but the alien forces were overwhelming. The technology of the Galactic Council was far more advanced than humanity's, and the humans had no way of knowing how to fight back. It wasn't just the firepower, it was the sheer coordination of the Council's forces. The alien ships moved as one, in perfect harmony, like a deadly swarm. The human fleet scattered. Some ships jumped into hyperspace, trying to escape the ambush, but many were left behind. Explosions filled the dark expanse of space as Earth's last hope for peace was torn apart. Commander Ria's ship was one of the few to survive the onslaught. Her crew was shaken, their bodies bruised from the blast, their spirits crushed by the realization of what had just happened. They had trusted the Council. They had believed in the promise of a better future, but now humanity was on its own. With her hands gripping the control panel, Ria made the hardest decision of her life. She knew that retreat was not an option. Earth could not afford to lose their fleet, their soldiers, and their dignity. She ordered her crew to navigate through the debris, avoiding the alien fleets that still patrolled the area. "We need to get back to Earth," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to warn them." But as the battered ship limped away, another surprise came. A mysterious transmission began to break through the interference. The signal was faint, but it was there. A hidden message from deep in space. Someone, somewhere, was offering help. At first, Ria thought it was just static, the result of the damage to their communication systems. But as the signal persisted, she realized something more. It wasn't just static. Someone was reaching out. The message was clear. "Humanity, your fate is not sealed." As the crew listened to the message, a sense of hope, however faint, began to creep into their hearts. But where was this message coming from? Who could possibly be reaching out to humanity in the middle of such a dark hour? And why now? Commander Ria knew that this was not the time to question, but to act. The message could be humanity's only chance at survival. The betrayal of the Galactic Council was a bitter wound, but if there was a way to fight back, to turn the tide, this mysterious signal was their only hope. As Earth's remaining fleet made its way home, Commander Ria stared out into the vastness of space. The universe was full of dangers, and humanity had just learned how brutal it could be. But as she looked toward the future, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was not the end. It was only the beginning. And humanity was about to learn just how far they could go when pushed to the brink. The return to Earth. The battered human fleet limped through the void of space, each ship scared by the brutal attack. Their hulls were riddled with holes, energy shields shattered, and many of their engines barely functional. Commander Ria's ship, the Sentinel, led the way back to Earth, the faint signal that had appeared in the aftermath of the ambush still pulsing in her mind. She couldn't help but wonder who was behind the message, who had reached out when the galaxy's most powerful empire had turned its back on humanity. The message was brief, but it had given her and her crew a shred of hope. "Humanity, your fate is not sealed." Those words kept echoing in her mind, each repetition fueling a small spark of determination. Her crew, however, was a different story. They were exhausted. They had been through hell and back in the last few hours. The weight of betrayal hung heavily in the air, but the faint promise of salvation made them cautious. Hope was a dangerous thing. Too much of it could lead to disappointment. "Commander, we need to rest." Lieutenant Harris spoke up, his voice hoarse from too many hours in the command center. He had been monitoring the ship's systems nonstop, and his face showed the toll the last few days had taken on him. "I know, Lieutenant," Rhea replied, her eyes still fixed on the screen in front of her. "But we have to keep going. Earth needs to know what happened." The Sentinel was one of the few ships still capable of jumping through space, but it wasn't enough to carry the entire fleet. They had lost so many ships. Their only hope now was to return to Earth with the information they had gathered. Though the journey ahead would not be easy, the space around them was still filled with hostile fleets, and they couldn't afford to be detected. Every jump they made took them further away from safety, but Earth was their final destination. The crew silently acknowledged the grim reality. Humanity had no allies now. No one in the galaxy could be trusted. They were truly on their own. As the Sentinel entered the last stretch of their journey to Earth, the mysterious signal grew stronger. It was almost as though the message was guiding them. The closer they got to the Earth system, the clearer the transmission became, and soon it was no longer just a static-filled whisper in the dark. It was a direct call. "We're almost there," Rhea murmured. "Let's see who's on the other end of this." Her fingers hovered over the console, ready to respond to the transmission. She didn't know what to expect. Was this a trap? Another deception from the Galactic Council? Or was this a genuine offer of assistance? In her heart, she hoped it was the latter. But a small part of her wasn't so sure. Betrayal had already come from the highest authorities in the galaxy. What could stop someone else from turning on them now? Her mind raced as she considered the possibilities. "Commander, the signal is getting clearer," Lieutenant Harris reported, his eyes wide with shock. "It's coming from the outskirts of the solar system, from one of the moons. It's almost as if they knew we'd be coming." Rhea's stomach tightened. Whoever it was, they had to have known what had happened to Earth's fleet. And if they were waiting for the Sentinel to arrive, it could mean only one thing. This was no coincidence. "Prepare for a landing," Rhea ordered. "We need to know who's behind this, and if they're here to help us, or if we're walking into another trap." As the ship descended into Earth's atmosphere, the feeling of uncertainty weighed heavily on Rhea. The Earth they were returning to was no longer the same peaceful home it had once been. The war with the Galactic Council had changed everything. The planet was on high alert, its defenses ready for anything. They weren't the only ones who had suffered from the betrayal, but humanity's pain was far from over. The Sentinel glided through the atmosphere, its thrusters humming in the silence of space. The landing was smooth, but the unease in the pit of Rhea's stomach only grew. She stood at the command console, her eyes scanning the planet below, her heart pounding in her chest. Once they landed, the crew would have no choice but to face the unknown. They had no idea what awaited them, no idea who would answer the signal. Would it be another trick, or was there truly someone out there who wanted to help humanity? As the ship touched down on the surface of Earth, Rhea took a deep breath. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, humanity would have to stand united. They had been betrayed by the most powerful empire in the galaxy, but that would not be the end of their story. The Sentinel's hatch opened, and the crew stepped out into the cold, desolate landscape. They were on Earth, but they felt a world away from the planet they once knew. The war had changed everything, and now it was time to face what lay beyond. The betrayal had only been the beginning. The unexpected ally. The cold wind blew across the barren landscape of Earth's surface as the crew of the Sentinel stepped out. Their boots crunched against the cracked ground, the harsh winds whipping against their faces. There was no welcoming party, no signs of civilization. Just an eerie silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Rhea felt the weight of the situation settle over her. This was Earth, but it no longer felt like home. "Commander," Lieutenant Harris called out from behind. "Do we have any idea who could be waiting for us here?" Rhea turned to face him, her face grim. "I don't know, but someone sent that signal, and they knew exactly where to find us. Whoever they are, they're expecting us." She glanced around, her eyes scanning the empty horizon. The planet felt lifeless, a shell of what it once was. The war with the Galactic Council had ravaged Earth's defenses, leaving it vulnerable. But Rhea was determined. The message had been clear. Humanity still had allies, even if they were hidden deep in the shadows. "Let's move out," she said, her voice steady. "We need to find out who's behind this before it's too late." The crew followed, their footsteps muffled in the thick dust that covered the ground. They walked in silence, each of them lost in their own thoughts, wondering who would come to their aid after so much betrayal. Rhea's mind was clouded with doubt. Could they really trust this mysterious ally, or was it just another trap set by those who sought to destroy them? The landscape was bleak, dotted with the remnants of human cities that had once thrived. Tall, skeletal structures stood like forgotten monuments, their once vibrant colors faded and worn. The silence was deafening, as if the very planet itself had been abandoned. Rhea's heart tightened at the sight of the destruction, but she couldn't afford to dwell on the past. The future of humanity depended on what they did now. After what seemed like hours, they reached a clearing, and in the distance, Rhea saw something that made her stop in her tracks. A large metallic structure rising out of the ground. It looked out of place, its smooth surface contrasting sharply with the jagged, ruined landscape around it. It was unlike any human-made structure she had ever seen. It didn't belong on Earth or anywhere else in the galaxy, for that matter. "Is that?" Lieutenant Harris began, his voice filled with awe and uncertainty. "That's where the signal's coming from," Rhea said, her tone low. "We're about to find out who's behind all of this." They moved toward the structure, their pace quickening as they approached. The air grew colder and the wind howled, but the strange building seemed unaffected by the elements, its smooth surface shimmering in the dim light. As they reached the entrance, a panel in the wall slid open without a sound. The crew hesitated, exchanging wary glances, but Rhea didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, signaling for her team to follow her. Inside, the space was dimly lit, with walls lined with strange, alien technology. It looked nothing like the advanced machinery of the Galactic Council or any known species, but it was clearly sophisticated. The hum of power vibrated through the walls, sending a chill down Rhea's spine. "Stay alert," Rhea ordered. "We don't know what we're walking into." They moved deeper into the structure, the corridor twisting and turning, leading them into a vast chamber. At the center stood a figure cloaked in shadows, their features hidden beneath a hood. The figure stood still, as though waiting for them. Rhea's hand instinctively went to the weapon at her side, her senses on high alert. The figure's presence was unsettling, but there was something familiar about it, something that made her heart race. "Who are you?" Rhea demanded, her voice firm but filled with caution. The figure raised their hand, and a soft glow illuminated their face. It wasn't an alien face at all, but a human one. Sharp features, dark eyes, and a look of unshakable resolve. Rhea's breath caught in her throat. This person wasn't just anyone. This was someone who had been lost to history. "My name is Anara," the figure said, her voice calm but commanding. "And I've been waiting for you." Rhea's mind reeled. Anara. She knew that name. It had been whispered in the darkest corners of humanity's past, a name associated with those who had been left behind, those who had disappeared without a trace. The legends of humanity's secret factions, hidden away to protect Earth, to keep it safe from the galactic powers that sought to destroy them. Anara stepped forward, her eyes locking with Rhea's. "The Galactic Council made a grave mistake, Commander. They thought they could crush humanity, but they underestimated us. And now we're going to make them pay." Rhea's heart raced. She had been betrayed by the galaxy, and now she was standing before someone who knew more than she could ever imagine. This was the beginning of something far greater than she had anticipated. Humanity's revenge was no longer just a hope, it was a reality. "How can we help?" Rhea asked, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "What's our next move?" Anara's lips curled into a grim smile. "Your fleet may have been betrayed, but we have the power to bring it back. And with it, we will take the fight to the Galactic Council. It's time for them to see what happens when they mess with humanity." Rhea's eyes narrowed. The fire of vengeance burned bright in her chest. They had been betrayed, abandoned, and left for dead. But now, with this mysterious ally, they had a chance to show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. "Then let's show them," Rhea said, her voice filled with determination. The stage was set. The galaxy would learn a painful lesson in the cost of underestimating humanity, the price of betrayal. The massive starship Vengeance hovered in the black void of space, its dark form nearly invisible against the backdrop of distant stars. Inside the command center, Rhea stood before a large holographic display, her eyes scanning the coordinates of the Galactic Council's fortress world. It was heavily fortified, its defenses nearly impenetrable, and yet Rhea could feel the weight of something else in the air, a growing sense of anticipation. "This is it," she said quietly, though the words felt like they should have been shouted. "The final strike." Around her, the crew of the Sentinel worked in silence, their faces lit by the cold blue light of their control panels. They had all been through too much, lost too many comrades. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment they would take their revenge on the very forces that had betrayed them. Lieutenant Harris stepped up beside her, his face stern. "We've got a clear path, Commander. The Vengeance's weapon systems are ready, and the fleet is primed for action." Rhea nodded but didn't take her eyes off the holographic map. The fleet they had now was nothing like the one they had once commanded. It was small but well-equipped, thanks to their mysterious ally, Anara. The Council had thought they could destroy humanity with ease, but they didn't realize the determination that burned in the hearts of every human left. And now, they would see the consequences of their actions. "Any updates from Anara?" Rhea asked. Harris looked at his communicator. "Nothing yet. She's keeping us in the dark for now, but I trust her." Rhea sighed, trying to push the doubt from her mind. Anara had proven to be an invaluable ally, but there was something unsettling about her, about how little they knew of her past, of the forces she commanded. She wasn't someone to be easily understood, but right now, that was exactly what humanity needed. Someone who had the strength and resources to strike back at the heart of the Council's empire. But no matter how much trust she placed in Anara, Rhea couldn't help but wonder how far she could be pushed before her motives became questionable. What was her true goal? And more importantly, what was she expecting in return? "Commander," a voice interrupted her thoughts. Incoming message from the Vengeance. Rhea turned, her thoughts momentarily pushed aside. The voice was tight, almost strained, as the holographic figure of Anara materialized in front of them. "We're about to hit the Council's defenses. They know we're coming," Anara said, her expression unreadable. "But it doesn't matter. The moment they try to fire on us, they will regret it." The calm in Anara's voice was unnerving, almost as if she had known all along that this day would come. Rhea couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something bigger than they could have imagined, a trap that the Galactic Council was already setting for them. But she didn't let it show. "Not here. Not now." "We're ready," Rhea said, standing tall. "We'll follow your lead." Anara's lips twitched, a barely perceptible smile forming. "You're not following me, Commander. You're taking the lead. The galaxy will learn that humanity isn't just a threat. It's a force they cannot afford to ignore." With that, the communication ended, and the holographic image of Anara vanished, leaving Rhea and her crew with nothing but the quiet hum of the ship's engines and the mounting tension in the air. "All systems are green," Lieutenant Harris reported. "The fleet is in position. Rhea took one last look at the map. They were so close now, only a few more hours until they reached the fortress world. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mix of excitement and dread filling her. The Galactic Council had no idea what was coming, but they would soon find out. "All right," Rhea said, her voice steady despite the chaos brewing inside her. "It's time to show them what happens when you betray humanity." As the fleet moved into position, Rhea's thoughts flashed back to the moment when everything changed, when the Galactic Council had turned their backs on humanity, how they had taken everything from them, leaving them to rot in the depths of space, how they had underestimated Earth's resilience, believing humanity to be nothing more than a dying race, easily crushed beneath the weight of galactic power. But humanity had a secret the Council could never have anticipated: the strength to rise from the ashes. The Sentinel roared to life, its weapon systems charging as it joined the rest of the fleet. As Rhea stood there, watching the distant stars grow closer, she knew there was no turning back. The decision had been made, and the consequences of the Council's betrayal were about to unfold in ways they could never have imagined. A new chapter was about to begin for humanity, one written in fire and vengeance. And nothing, not the might of the Galactic Council, nor the galaxy itself, could stop them. "Prepare for engagement," Rhea ordered, her voice cold and resolute. The fleet surged forward, leaving the safety of the shadows as they headed straight for the heart of the Council's empire. The reckoning. The moment the fleet emerged from the darkness of space, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The Vengeance, flanked by the smaller but heavily armed ships of humanity's newly assembled fleet, surged forward like a living thing. Rhea stood at the front of the bridge, her eyes locked onto the view of the Council's massive fortress planet, its towering defense platforms and impossibly large ships looming ominously in the distance. For years, humanity had been abandoned, forgotten by the very powers that ruled the galaxy. The Galactic Council had made its decision, one that had condemned billions to death, and now humanity was about to make its presence known once more. "Commander," Harris spoke, his voice a bit tense, "they've detected us. All systems are going dark, but they're charging weapons. Expect heavy resistance." Rhea nodded grimly. The stakes had never been higher. The Vengeance had been modified with alien technology, and humanity had learned new ways of war from the remnants of the alien factions that had tried to wipe them out. Still, they had no illusions. This wouldn't be an easy battle. "We knew this was coming," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "They want to wipe us out, but we won't go down quietly. Keep your heads, everyone. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to show the galaxy that humanity cannot be ignored." The distant hum of energy shields charging resonated through the ship, and Rhea felt her pulse quicken. This was it, the final moment. A loud blaring alarm filled the room, and a red warning light flashed across the command center. The Council's defenses had already locked onto them. The massive battle stations surrounding the planet were coming to life, and the first wave of enemy ships sped toward them. The Vengeance was the first to open fire, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that slammed into the closest enemy vessels. They disintegrated in a flash of light, their remains scattering into space like dust. "Shields up. All fighters, launch now." Rhea barked, her voice unwavering. The Sentinel's hangar doors opened with a thunderous roar, releasing humanity's fighters into the fray. A storm of laser fire erupted as the fleets collided. It was a battle unlike any the galaxy had seen before. The sheer determination of humanity's ships, powered by both alien technology and their own ingenuity, was matched only by their unyielding will to survive. The sound of laser blasts and explosions filled the air, echoing through the cold expanse of space. Rhea's heart pounded as she watched the chaos unfold. But even in the midst of the destruction, there was something else, something more profound. An undeniable truth about humanity's resolve. For years, the Galactic Council had underestimated humanity. They had treated them like an insignificant nuisance, a dying race not worthy of notice. But the vengeance was a statement, a message that they were wrong. Humanity had clawed its way back from the brink of extinction, and now they would make the Council pay for their mistake. Enemy flagship incoming, Harris reported urgently. They've deployed their elite forces. It's the Ravager. We need to take it down now. Rhea's gaze sharpened. The Ravager was the heart of the Council's fleet, an enormous battle cruiser capable of devastating anything in its path. But it didn't matter. Humanity had faced worse, had overcome worse, and now was their chance to prove it once and for all. All ships, focus fire on the Ravager, Rhea commanded, her voice clear and commanding. We cripple it now, or we die trying. The battle intensified as humanity's fleet coordinated its assault on the Ravager. Explosions rocked the enemy ship, the shields flashing brightly as they began to fail under the relentless barrage. But even as the Ravager faltered, another wave of enemy fighters surged forward, aiming to protect their flagship at all costs. "Humanity's not going down without a fight," shouted one of the crew members, and Rhea couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The Sentinel and the Vengeance fired together, an unstoppable force of destruction. Energy beams slammed into the Ravager, tearing into its hull and forcing it into a sudden spin. The Council's flagship groaned under the pressure, its once imposing form now struggling to stay in the fight. "We've breached their outer hull," Harris shouted, his voice full of exhilaration. "We've got a shot at taking it down." Rhea's eyes never left the Ravager. She knew this was the turning point. The fate of humanity, the fate of everything they had fought for, hinged on this moment. The Ravager was the symbol of everything the Galactic Council had done to them, a reminder of the betrayal they had suffered. And now it was on the brink of destruction. "We finish this now," Rhea ordered. "All ships, fire at will." The energy blasts from humanity's fleet slammed into the Ravager, breaking through its weakened shields and punching into its core. The once proud flagship of the Galactic Council began to disintegrate before their eyes, its massive form exploding in a brilliant flash of light. The shockwave sent enemy ships scattering, many of them breaking formation and retreating in fear. For a moment, the silence of space was deafening. The destruction of the Ravager signified more than just a tactical victory. It was the end of the Council's reign over humanity. "We did it," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice filled with awe. Rhea stood motionless, staring at the wreckage of the Ravager as its remnants drifted through space. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, humanity had a chance. They had delivered the message they'd promised. The galaxy would never forget the price of betraying humanity. "We've just begun," Rhea said, her voice hard with resolve. "Let's finish this." And with that, the fleet moved forward, into the heart of the Galactic Council's power, determined to deliver the final blow, the final push. The explosion of the Ravager sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet, but the battle was far from won. The Galactic Council, though shaken by the destruction of their flagship, quickly regrouped. They still outnumbered humanity's fleet, and their remaining warships began to form a tight defensive perimeter around the Council's central command station, the heart of their power. Rhea stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, her gaze fixed on the growing mass of enemy ships. Their shields were still strong, their weapons lethal, but they were vulnerable. The destruction of their flagship had left a gaping hole in their formation, one that humanity would exploit. "Commander, we've got another wave incoming," Harris said, his voice urgent. "We can't hold them off much longer with this force alone." Rhea's mind raced. The Vengeance and the smaller ships of the fleet had already taken considerable damage in the earlier skirmishes. If they didn't act now, they might not get another chance. "We need to take out their command station. If we can destroy the heart of their operation, the rest will crumble," Rhea said, her voice cold with determination. But Harris hesitated. "The station is heavily fortified, Commander. It's surrounded by 3 layers of defense ships, and their flagship is still intact. I don't care if it's surrounded by 100 layers of ships. Rhea replied sharply. "We came here to finish what we started. We either succeed now, or we die trying." Her words rang out with the weight of years of suffering, of betrayal, of everything humanity had endured at the hands of the Galactic Council. There was no turning back now. "Divert all power to the forward guns," Rhea ordered. "Initiate the Omega Protocol. We need to take them by surprise." The Omega Protocol was humanity's most daring tactic, a last-ditch effort to break through enemy lines by concentrating all firepower into a single devastating strike. It was risky, especially in the heart of a war zone, but Rhea had no other choice. The fate of humanity's future rested on the success of this strike. "All ships, move into formation. Focus all fire on the center of their defenses. We'll break through and hit the command station," Rhea commanded. The fleet quickly shifted into position, with the Vengeance leading the charge. The remaining ships of humanity's fleet spread out, weaving through the debris of destroyed enemy vessels as they closed in on the Council's command station. The enemy ships, realizing the sudden shift in strategy, began to fire furiously, launching salvo after salvo of laser blasts and missiles. The Vengeance shook under the barrage, but its shields held strong. Rhea gripped the armrest of her command chair, her eyes locked on the distant target. They had come so far. They could not fail now. "We're almost there," Harris reported, his voice tight with focus. "We have a clear line of sight to the command station." Rhea nodded. "Now, all guns, fire at will." The Vengeance fired first, a massive energy blast from its forward cannons that tore through the vacuum of space, heading straight for the command station. The other ships followed, unleashing a torrent of firepower that created a concentrated beam of destruction aimed at the heart of the Council's stronghold. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The blasts connected, slamming into the command station's defensive shields with the force of a star-going supernova. The energy from the strike lit up the entire battlefield, blinding everyone on the bridge of the Vengeance. When the light faded, the Council's defenses were fractured. The command station, though still intact, was no longer impervious to attack. "We've breached their defenses," Harris shouted, exhilarated. "One more strike, and we can take it down." But as the crew of the Vengeance celebrated their success, an even greater threat loomed. From the depths of the Council's forces, a massive fleet of reinforcement ships began to emerge, their weapons primed and ready for the final push to wipe out humanity. "Commander, they've called in reinforcements," Harris warned. "If we don't act fast, we'll be overwhelmed." Rhea's mind raced, but there was no time to hesitate. She knew what had to be done. "Prepare for the final push," she said, her voice calm but firm. "All ships, target the command station with everything we've got. This ends now." With the reinforcements closing in, humanity's fleet had no choice but to make a final stand. The Vengeance fired again, the energy from its cannons enveloping the command station in an inferno of light. The beams connected with the weakened station, tearing it apart from the inside. The station's shields flickered and failed, and the structure began to crumble under the weight of humanity's fury. The Galactic Council's last bastion of control over the galaxy was falling apart. "Fire all remaining torpedoes," Rhea shouted, her voice filled with authority. One last, coordinated strike from humanity's fleet obliterated the command station, sending debris scattering into the void of space. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then the message came through. "The Galactic Council's command station has been destroyed," Harris said in disbelief. "We've done it. They're finished." Rhea stood motionless, staring at the remains of the Council's stronghold, now nothing more than a heap of broken metal and burning wreckage. This was the moment of triumph. The moment humanity proved that no one, not even the mighty Galactic Council, could ignore them any longer. "We've shown them," Rhea whispered, her voice barely audible over the comms. "They can't betray us again." The battle wasn't over yet, but humanity had won the most important victory. The Galactic Council had been destroyed, and the galaxy would now be forced to reckon with the power of humanity. As the remnants of the Council's forces fled, the survivors of humanity's fleet took a moment to breathe. But Rhea knew there was still much to be done. There was no going back. "We move forward," she said, her voice steady and resolute. "And this time, we do it on our terms." With the destruction of the Council's command station, the fate of the galaxy had changed forever. A new dawn. The battle was over. The Galactic Council, once the supreme power in the galaxy, had crumbled under the might of humanity's vengeance. Its ships lay scattered across the stars, their once proud fleets now just floating wreckage. The command station, the beating heart of their control, had been reduced to ruins. Rhea stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, staring out at the aftermath. The sky was filled with the wreckage of the enemy ships, drifting aimlessly through space. The stars, usually a source of wonder and mystery, now seemed almost cold and indifferent. There was no more grandeur, no more tyranny, just silence. Her crew had done the impossible. Against all odds, they had stood their ground, and now the galaxy would never be the same again. The Galactic Council, who had once dismissed humanity as insignificant, had learned just how wrong they were. "Commander," Harris's voice broke through her thoughts. "We've received a transmission. It's from the remaining leaders of the Galactic Council." Rhea turned to face him, her expression unreadable. She had expected this. The remnants of the Council would try to save face, to negotiate for their survival, but she knew better than to trust their words. "Put it through," she ordered, her tone sharp. The screen flickered to life, revealing a senior officer from the Council, their face stern, yet tinged with fear. Behind him, the destruction of their forces could be seen in the background. Floating debris and burning wrecks, marking the once pristine Council fleet. "You've done it, humanity," the officer said, his voice steady but strained. "You've defeated us. But know this, you have no idea what you've unleashed." Rhea narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" The officer hesitated, his expression faltering for a brief moment. "The Galactic Council's power may have been shattered, but it was not the true source of our control. There are other forces in the galaxy, older and far more dangerous than you could ever imagine. Forces that the Council had kept in check for centuries. Then we'll deal with them, too," Rhea replied, her voice firm. "There's no going back. We're not backing down." The officer gave a dark, knowing look. "You think you've won, but you've only opened the door to something far more perilous. You're no longer just a thorn in the side of the galaxy's rulers. You're a target, and you've made enemies far beyond the reach of your fleet. Be careful, Commander. The galaxy has a way of turning its enemies into something far worse." With that, the transmission cut off, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Rhea's gaze lingered on the dark screen for a moment, processing the officer's words. He had sounded almost resigned, as though he knew something humanity didn't. Harris spoke up, breaking the silence. "Do you think it's true that there are other forces out there, more powerful than the Council?" Rhea turned to him, her face hardening. "I don't know, but we'll find out, and we'll be ready." The crew of the Vengeance had fought with everything they had, but Rhea knew this victory would not be the end. The galaxy was vast, and new threats could emerge from the shadows at any moment. Humanity had proven its strength, but they could not afford to rest. "We have time to prepare," she said, her voice resolute. "We won't be caught off guard again." The crew nodded, each of them understanding the gravity of her words. The battle for survival had just begun. The galaxy would not be the same, and humanity would now have to carve its place within it. As the Vengeance and the remaining ships of humanity's fleet began their journey back to Earth, Rhea couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Council's defeat had sent a message, but there were those who would not forgive such a crushing blow. And there were new challenges ahead, some of which might be even more dangerous than the ones they had just faced. Still, Rhea felt a flicker of hope. For the first time in years, humanity wasn't looking over its shoulder in fear. They had reclaimed their power, and now they would chart their own course. No longer would they be pawns in the games of others. "Let's get to Earth," Rhea said, her voice steady, as the stars stretched out before them. "It's time to rebuild. Time to show the galaxy who humanity really is." And as the Vengeance sped through the vastness of space, leaving the wreckage of the Council behind, Rhea knew that humanity's story was far from over. They had survived. They had triumphed. And now they would face whatever came next, together.